As you can probably tell from the title slide, today's presentation is about Terraform and our journey embracing infrastructure as code. I'm going to walk you through the story of a platform enablement team that took 3 days to provision a public cloud environment down to under 5 minutes. But before I get started, let's just do a quick thought exercise here. Who here reads technical articles? Just raise your hand. Right, it's most of us, right? So we all probably read those articles where they talk about various technologies, infrastructure, and how to consume them. You know, like Terraform, React. Someone give me a buzzword. Anyone, come on. Wow, come on. Kubernetes, right? You know, so you read about all these technologies, right? And you have authors that kind of explain to them how to use them. And a lot of times you read these articles, and at the very end, it's almost like it's the greatest thing in the world. It's almost like it's like a ta-da moment. Let me ask you something. Is that how it is in real life? Has that been your experience? No. Infrastructure is hard. Infrastructure's code is also hard. So with that being said, let's just have an honest conversation. Terraform is awesome. And if you're in this room, chances are I don't have to convince you. But with that being said, it does introduce a series of challenges. So I'm going to go over some of the challenges that we encountered. This is going to be the outline for today. I'm going to talk a little bit about State Farm, who I am. Then we'll talk about the public cloud enablement team, its composition. And I want to break it up into 3 stages: crawl, walk, and run. We'll talk a little about automation, the impact it has on the workforce, what are some of our next steps, and then we'll wrap it up with takeaways. Cool? So State Farm. Most of you have probably heard of us, but if you're not familiar with us, we're an insurance company. But we're also more than just an insurance company. We also provide a lot of financial products. We have a bank, so we deal with a lot of stuff. At the end of the day, insurance is nothing more than an intangible product. It's a promise. Well, those promises require a very large IT system. If you look at the number of policies that we have over 83 million policies. That requires a very massive IT infrastructure. Not only that, but staff. If you take that out of the equation, just look at our agency workforce. We have almost 19,000 agents. That's more US State Farm agents than there are McDonald's in the US. Pretty crazy, right? Who am I? I've been with State Farm for 5 years. Started out as an intern in the mainframe networking area. Did that for about 3 years, focusing on a lot of infrastructure stuff. Got a little bit tired, then I went back to application development, where I got to work on modern JavaScript frameworks. And then after a year of that, I came back to infrastructure, where I focused on automation in public cloud space. And now most recently, I'm an architecture manager, responsible for architecture in public cloud and our developer evangelism movement in public cloud. And then on a free time, I like to hike, exercise. I'm a technical writer, but when I write these articles, I don't do ta-da moments. I share my code with you so you can kind of see where I go along. But all in general, just love to dabble with technology. And then you got the generic friends and adventures, yada, yada. So let's actually talk about the main character of today's story, the public cloud adoption team. We're about 2 years into a public cloud journey. So this team is responsible for standing up and providing a public cloud platform for our developers. We have the risk and the governance side. These guys focus on legislation, making sure we have hard controls, making sure we do stuff that our auditors expect, and that allows our leadership to sleep soundly at night. Then we have the automation and support side. This is pretty much who we're going to talk about today. At this point in time, the team is composed of 3 analysts, and they have a lot of infrastructure experience, but almost 0 developer background. I bring this up because this is going to have a big impact on our journey. We were doing some infrastructure as code, but it was mainly the given public cloud provider's ISE solution, which is usually in YAML or JSON format. So a little bit over a year ago, we made the decision to embrace Terraform as our public cloud infrastructure as code solution. And that kicks us off to the crawl. So I picked this ASCII emoji because it's a pretty accurate representation of where we were at this point in time. We really weren't sure what we're doing. We knew that we were going to do Terraform, but we really don't know where to start. The beginning was probably to convert the public cloud provider ISE solution Terraform. So that's where we started. And we had an intern that summer who actually converted all of this to Terraform. Connor, he's here in the audience today, so thank you for doing that, Connor. Appreciate it. Yeah, give him a round of applause. That's not fun. And at this point in time, it took our team 3 days to provision a public cloud environment to a product team being developers. That's not very agile. That's actually not good. 3 days is unacceptable. So I called this presentation Terraform, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Well, ladies and gentlemen, strap in because we're about to get into the ugly. So just to give you an idea on how bad of a shape we were in, we were leveraging monolithic Terraform, meaning that it was all in one big massive file. Not pretty. There's a lot of code repetition. We weren't leveraging modules. We certainly didn't have a CI/CD pipeline, so Terraform was run locally. We weren't really working collaborative. We're also using local credentials. And here's the worst part. We weren't even using a version control system. We weren't using Git. Yeah, it's pretty bad. Oh, it keeps going. We were doing semi-automation. What that means is that we're doing some stuff in Terraform, but other stuff we're doing manually. I call this automation purgatory. You don't want to do this. This is the worst of both worlds. And for those in the audience who have dabbled in this space, you know that it's ugly to fix stuff when you're doing semi-automation. It can be pretty time-consuming. But we were doing one thing right, and we were leveraging remote backend. So at least we have that going for us, right? The other aspect that we were struggling with is the scope of our state file for an environment. How should we structure it? And the way we started out with wasn't easy. It was actually pretty complex. So let me walk you through that. If we take an environment, if you take this test folder, for instance, you can kind of see that we split it into a couple different folders. And it's pretty complex at this point. You can see that there's multiple state files. The global folder, usually we would put resources here that don't span a single region, so global in nature. A good example of that would be identity access management. The init folder, this is where we define the Terraform resource that would initialize the account. Would also include stuff like service control policies. Then you have the regional folder, and within the regional folder, you also have the folders for the respective region. So here you would find stuff such as compute resources and other stuff specific to that region. So it's a little bit complex at this time. It was difficult to bring new people on board. If we just take a common scenario from a pipeline standpoint, if you wanted to do a Terraform plan and apply, you can hard code that into your pipeline to CD into that folder. But you don't really want to do that. You could write a script that loops through every folder and does Terraform plan and apply. That's still not pretty. You could write a script that loops through every folder and identifies if there's a Git difference in that folder and then does Terraform plan apply. But it's too complex and it really shouldn't be this hard. So we were pretty paranoid with the state file and we paid some price for that. So what did we do to go from crawling to walking? Well, we hired a software developer on our team. This had a really big impact on our team because originally, we were just composed of infrastructure analysts that had a tremendous amount of infrastructure experience, but no programming background. So now we had someone that could show us the rope, someone that could do pair programming with us, someone that could show us what tools to use, how to structure a repository for the organization. So one of the first things we did when we brought this developer was start using Git. So we started structuring product teams to get their own project repository. So if you're a product team that had a public cloud environment, you had your own repo, because we laid down the core infrastructure for all our product teams. We also started looking into modules. So we put all of our modules in one repository. That way, if we ever needed to change our modules, we just do it in one place. And then our downstream consumers, well, if we ever make an update, we just need to run a Terraform plan and apply, and pretty good. By us embracing Terraform modules, we were able to reduce our code base by over 10,000 lines. So that right there tells you that there's a lot of inefficiency going on. So with that, that takes us over to the walking phase. So we're about 4 months into our journey, right? We're not really walking. It's more like a baby, like learning how to walk. We're kind of stumbling around, but we're making progress. So one of the first things we did was we implemented a pipeline. The way we did that is that we tied it into our versioning control system natively with Kubernetes. So now we're running Terraform in a containerized environment. there's a lot of good stuff with that. One, we're no longer need for local credentials or to run it from our workstation. That made our friends in InfoSec pretty happy, I know that. But you also have a fast feedback loop. So that way, when someone does a git commit and pushes their branch up, you can get that Terraform plan and kind of see what you're doing, or if you're trying to do something crazy. And if everyone's happy with it, you can do the merge request, and then that will deploy your Terraform. So everyone in your team has a chance to see what's going on. The other thing we did is that we created a Terraform Docker image for everyone in the organization. Terraform's awesome, but there are some limitations. But a lot of you in the room know that you can get around those limitations by using a local exec. Sometimes you can invoke a CLI, Python script, you name it. So we created a Docker image that had one of the most common tools that people in our organization needed, such as bash, zip, and so forth. So we made that on their behalf that everyone could consume, so not everyone has to reinvent the wheel. The other thing we did is that at this point in time, PCAT, the Public Cloud Enablement team, we're pretty much the Terraform SMEs for the organization. But we're not scalable because we're 4 analysts at this time. So we created a Terraform cookbook, which is a single page static site where you can kind of go and read about how to do stuff in Terraform, such as how do you achieve a for loop? How do you configure Terraform to work with the enterprise proxy? All this good stuff. This is obviously pre-Terraform 12. Now that we have 4 each, it's amazing. The other thing is that we created a Terraform forum internally because, again, PCAT is not scalable, but we're a big believer in the community support model because we believe an organization of our magnitude, the only way we're going to be successful in our public cloud journey is by embracing a community model where people share knowledge back and forth with one another. So we're doing a lot of stuff to help people consume Terraform and the product teams, but we still weren't happy with our state file or how we had it structured. You guys saw that it was pretty complex, right? So what did? We rolled up our sleeves and started doing research. One of the things we did was come to HashiConf. We attended HashiConf last year. We spoke to several of you. We spoke to Terraform, HashiCorp product SMEs. We got a lot of insights. We got to ask a lot of good questions and learn from other people. We read a book. Yeah, we read Terraform Up and Running. If you're new into Terraform, that's a fantastic resource by Jim Brickman, something I would strongly recommend. But we tried a lot of new things, and a lot of them we fell flat on our face. Some of them worked, some of them didn't. But remember, our vision is to be able to provision a public cloud environment within under 5 minutes. So about 8 months, we finally settled on what we think was going to be a good solution that could take us to the 5-minute vision. And really what it comes down to is that we modularized everything, meaning that at this point in time, we have a pretty good understanding of what you need to do to deploy a public cloud environment for our product teams. So everything is modularized. The other thing is that we started leveraging TFVARs a lot. So to really help you picture or understand our architecture or hierarchy, take a look at this. If you take these 2 environments, you're going to notice that they pretty much look identical. BackNTF and the TFVARs are the only 2 files that are unique. BackNTF contains the key to a remote object storage location. But the TFVARs file, that's what has all the unique values for each environment, such as your network CIDR, the account email, all that good stuff that makes that environment different. So at this point, where we kind of gotten to is that we almost have like a cookie cutter template to provision an account. This is awesome, because at this point, by us doing this, we're doing this in under a day. So we come a long way from 3 days, but this is awesome. But what's great about it is if you were to look at the main TF, all you're going to see are modules. So awesome. But we still have a couple of challenges. But from an organizational standpoint, we can now just create a Git repo, copy these files, and submit up to repo and run a pipeline. And yeah, we can create the account. But we're still not happy because there's still copying and pasting going on. There's still a lot of manual action. And as all you know, when humans are involved, there's a good chance of error. So again, we knew that we had to step up our game to get to the next point, which takes me to 10 months into our journey, where we created a tool. And what this is is a single-page application. It's a UI that abstracts Terraform for our operator. And what this allowed us to do is that instead of copying files and creating repos, that's all being automated right now. So when you go to this single-page application that we have, you click on a button that says Create Account. You click on that, it's going to take you to a screen where you have all these input values. And those input values are account email, VPC CIDR, tags, blah, 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 all these different things that we want for our environment. When you fill those out, you hit the button Create. And when you do that, a lot of things are happening. First, it starts making API calls to our version control system where it creates a repository. It adds the proper merge approvals, merge approvers, sets the proper push rules. It generates all the Terraform files, creates the backend TF and the TFRs, and it got those values based on those input fields. We're able to do this because at this point in time, our Terraform is so modularized that they all look the same. The only thing we really need to worry about is creating the TFRs. So at this point in time now we can create an account under 5 minutes because all those API calls that created the repo, the Terraform files, it also triggered a pipeline and kicked it off. So now all we had to do was go look at the Terraform plan, approve it, hit apply, and it goes creates the account. This isn't a ta-da moment because it's taken us over 10 months to get here, but we still have some pain points. A pretty good one is that if I talk about our structure, each product team gets its own repository. And then we have one repository that has all of our modules. So if I make a change to a module, just gotta merge that into the repo, do all that stuff, and that module has been updated. But in order for all my downstream dependencies to consume that module and its updated code, I gotta run Terraform plan and apply, right? That's not an issue when you have 10 different project repositories. But what do you do when you have over 20, over 100? You don't want to be that guy that clicks on 100 different repos and start a pipeline. I know that because we did that at one point. Connor did it at one point too. It's very time consuming. The other aspect is, yeah, we can create an account, that's wonderful, but what about when a product team wants to add a different environment? Let's say they start out with creating a test environment. Now they're mature enough for a prod environment. Well, the tool can help me there, right? So now we're back to copying and pasting and filling out values. So here's pretty much what the tool looks like. We did get around those two issues I just mentioned. We added the capability to add an environment. So now the tool was smart enough to identify which repositories we had and which environment it already had. So if it had a research and test, we can now add a prod folder. We also got around running all the pipelines. So now the tool is smart enough to identify all repositories, and you can start all the pipelines at once, which is an easy way for us to max our Kubernetes cluster, we found out. Or you can select individually which project repository you want to run the pipeline for. The other aspect of us creating this tool that really helped us out is that we no longer have to maintain this responsibility of creating accounts. We can delegate that now. We delegated that to our second level team, our operations team, and now we're focusing on other automation. So now you have the capability to give someone the ability to create a public cloud environment without having any knowledge of Terraform and do it the right way every time. That for us was huge because that takes a big burden off our back. I do want to talk a little about the impact that Terraform has on an organization. There's no way we would be where we are today if it wasn't for Terraform. It's amazing, but it does introduce a series of challenges. So if you're young in your public cloud journey and you're embracing Terraform, which I hope you are, you really have to embrace it. That means yourself, your team, and your leadership. You can't go half in. And if you are embracing Terraform, you're going to have to learn some programming basics. If you don't, you're going to have a hard time. You guys saw how bad we were in our crawl phase, right? That's because we didn't have any developer experience. So bring that developer, add a developer to the team if you find yourself in the same situation. Don't just let go of your infrastructure people. No, they have a tremendous amount of experience that will pay dividends, but bring them up to speed. Take them along with you, teach them, coach them, show them the ropes. We wouldn't be able to get to where we are today if it really wasn't for our attitude. We were excited, we had a positive mindset, but we knew we had a lot to learn, and we fell on our face many, many times, I can promise you that. But you also need leadership support, and we have support from the highest levels of organization to continue our endeavor with embracing infrastructure as code. Not just from like approval and not breathing down our neck, but also in enabling us to leverage third-party learning resource or third-party consultants to get input. That's huge. Something that we also do is that we leverage, we promote public cloud certifications. There's a couple of benefits with that. One, you learn good skill sets about the given platform that you're working on. But when you're embracing infrastructure as code and you're young in your public cloud journey, there's a lot of new technologies and concepts you're juggling. And sometimes getting one of the first certification is a big win. It can be a big confidence booster. And you need those confidence boosters when you're learning all these new technologies. So what are some of the next things that we're doing? Well, we're going with Terraform Enterprise. And to be honest, it really comes down to 3 main reasons. Sentinel, we've gotten good enough now that we have event-driven automation. So if someone tries to do something crazy, like allow everyone in the internet to come in, for instance, we have automation that will stop that, revert the change, notify that individual, and notify their leadership. Our auditors love that story. Our leadership loved that story. But we want to step up our game. So now we want to be proactive versus just reactive. That's where Sentinel comes in. So now we can prevent bad actions or developers from shooting themselves in the foot by accident. And now that the new cost estimation feature came out, you can do a lot more cool stuff with Sentinel. The second thing is that we've been seeing in our organization that a lot of product teams have issues creating a pipeline for Terraform. Everyone's looking for that DevOps engineer or someone that understands how to tie infrastructure and pipelines and application development practice together. Well, with TFE, you get that pipeline out of the box. So it makes it easier. So it reduces the technical barrier for people to come up with a Terraform pipeline. Lastly is the private module registry. One of the things that our team, PCAT, is responsible for is to create architectural patterns. And normally when you see a pattern, you have this nice little diagram. And you kind of have an idea on how you should set up this architecture. But it's a more compelling story when you can consume this architecture/pattern with a Terraform module and deploy that in a matter of minutes. That's the vision we envision with the private module registry. We want to reduce the technical barrier and be able to deploy architectures much more rapidly and do it in the right way. The second one, enabling training environments. We're in an enterprise, so we're surrounded by firewalls and proxies. So before this, if someone wanted to learn about any public cloud environment or the ones we're consuming, unless they were a part of a product team that had a public cloud environment, they had no ways of learning that while inside of State Farm. They would have to do it on their own. And this has been a roadblock for us. We've gotten good enough now where we can provision public cloud environments for people to come in and learn and do whatever they want, including Terraform. And we clean that account every 3 days. And it's just a continuous loop. We believe this is going to be a tremendous asset in getting our organization to the next level as a whole. Automation, we're never done investing in automation. It just keeps on going. That's one of the reasons why we created that tool. Community investment. I mentioned this earlier where in order for an organization of our size to really be successful, we have to embrace the community model. And again, it goes to PCAT not being scalable. And as we get more product teams into the public cloud space, there's a lot more questions being asked. So by us making sure that the community stays highly technical, that they embrace knowledge sharing, we're going to be able to sustain that growth. But it really comes down to making sure that community stays strong and that they do share knowledge back. That's one of the reasons why I also have a team of developer evangelists to help focus on that, to create architectural patterns, to create modules, to create stuff that will reduce the technical barrier for product teams, but also to consume some of the successes and failures that they had to again, make it easier for other teams. The last one is share knowledge back. That's something that we at State Farm haven't always been the best at. And then mainly, probably the insurance and financial industry as a whole, we like to kind of keep our mouth shut and kind of stay out of the spotlight. But that's something we intend to change, and something we have approval from our highest level of the organization start changing. So that tool I showed you guys, we plan on open sourcing that. We're not there yet, but it's something we want to give back to everyone. We also have other content that we plan on open sourcing and contributing back on. But other ways we're going to help out is by sharing knowledge back, such as presentations such as today. So be on the lookout for more of that stuff. So to kind of wrap things up here, it's okay to not know everything. One of the reasons I'm here today is not to kind of showcase like, oh, look at us. No, we were pretty bad. You guys saw how bad it was in the crawl phase, right? And a lot of times, we have all these big brands that kind of hide their successes or their learning growth. Learning is a clumsy process, and sometimes you just got to be open with it. And I feel like we're not always open about that. Learning can be hard. But my point is, don't be afraid. Try new things. Ask questions. You're all doing the right thing by being here, attending HashiCon, learning. That's how you get around these. Embrace infrastructure as code. Don't do semi-automation. Don't do automation purgatory. It's hard. It's painful. Invest in learning and development. That comes in many forms, whether it be taking some time on your own to learn and read technical articles, or just trying new things, or leveraging third-party learning resources. If the tool doesn't exist, then make it. Don't just sit there and feel sorry for yourself. Oh, the tool doesn't exist. No. I know it sounds kind of harsh to say, but sometimes we all fall into the victim mentality. Bring developers on your team. At the end of the day, we're all developers because we like to solve business problems. Well, this is a business problem sometimes. So bring developers, create tools if needed. Again, it kind of goes back to if you find yourself in a situation as we found ourselves where we were an infrastructure team that didn't have a developer, then bring them along because they can teach you and show you the ways. And lastly, share knowledge back. Help others. That's part of being a good neighbor. That's one of our mottos, is to be a good neighbor, and we believe in helping others back. So if you're starting out in your public cloud journey, then hopefully some of the lessons learned I shared with you today can help you out. There's a quote by Oscar Wilde that says, "We're all in the gutter, but some of us are looking at the stars," right? And that's how it is sometimes when you try out these new technologies. Yeah, those technical articles make it sometimes seem like a ta-da moment, but that's never really the case. And the only way we're going to get better is by sharing our successes and failures back. So I implore you to don't just try something new when you go back, but share back with others. Like we've been here for 2 days now, and most of you get some motivation when you're at a conference. I know I get motivated coming to a conference, but don't just let your motivation just stay here today. Use that motivation, go back, and just try something new. It doesn't matter if it doesn't work. Maybe it's a crazy idea, but you never know when that crazy idea can pay huge dividends. That tool we created, that was a crazy idea, but man, are we glad we tried it. We're always looking for good talent, so a little shameless plug. Check out statefarm.com careers if you ever want to check out some cool projects. I included my email address if you want to shoot me questions or just want to discuss some of the tools that we created. But at the end of the day, I just want to say thanks for listening and go try something new. Thanks.